Good afternoon, everyone. Have you received the PPTs and have you received assignment questions? Yes. Please try to submit the assignments before the deadline, all of you. And I think we've started listening, or are we still in the previous chapter? Did we finish the previous chapter, ethics? No one remembers?
Yes, ma'am, I think we are finished.
So we are about to start the new chapter, or we have already started?
We were about to.
Okay. And the next chapter is listening. Uh, and I think all of you know the modules for your quiz test. You know the modules for your quiz test? Yes, yes, absolutely, yeah. Uh, and I think you have received all the PPTs and the PDF of the book, uh, The Art of Public Speaking, also. I think I mailed that to you as well. Okay, right. So, since we finished the previous chapter on ethics, um, the when is your lab? Uh, Tuesday. Okay. So on Tuesday, uh, did I tell you what to do? What is your assignment? Have I told you?
Yes, ma'am.
And social issue,
Like
anyone.
social issues. Oh, yeah.
Yes. So uh, you have to speak a few lines about the social issue that concerns you, which would be the basis of your upcoming persuasive speech. So, the premises for your upcoming speech will be this assignment that you're going to do in the lab in the coming week. Okay. Uh, Now, going back to the chapter on listening, the objective of this lesson is to explain the difference between listening and hearing and understand the value of listening, identify the three attributes of active listeners, recognize the barriers to effective listening, and employ strategies to engage listeners. Provide constructive feedback as a listener. Now, before we start this chapter, I just wanted to know why are we doing listening in a speaking course? This is a public speaking course, an argumentation course. So why are we even bothered to do a unit on listening? What is the academic
Because
reason?
listening is as important as speaking. Because if we don't listen, we don't know about any social issue or any topic.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Right. Uh, Now, what is the difference between hearing and listening? What's the difference between hearing? Mm-hmm. Okay. Hmm. Right. You're right. So now, listening versus speaking. Why is listening important for public speaking? Public speaking needs an audience to hear. Otherwise, it's private speaking. And anyone overhearing you might wonder if you've lost your voice, if you're talking to yourself. Well, most of the time we talk to ourselves, but we don't speak aloud. We have a soliloquy, and that's always in a mental plane. But if you talk aloud with no one around, then people might misinterpret it. So, in public speaking, what makes public speaking truly effective is having others in your presence. Now, Adler says talking about is we always thought that listening is something natural. We have been doing this all our lives. We have been listening every day, in and out, and we have been always listening. Yes. So, this is something that I'm not audible. Oh, okay. Give me a minute. Okay, am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, no, listening is something that we have been doing all our life. This is what the basic assumption is, that we have been listening throughout, and this is something which comes very naturally to us. So, listening is very natural. Uh, we really don't have to make a lot of effort uh, in listening. This is the general assumption, basic understanding about listening. So, of the four skills, what are the four skills of language? If you want to learn any language, what are the four skills we need to focus on? Yes, tell me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Reading, writing, listening, speaking.
Yes, Tanisha, right. So these are the four skills. Any, if you want to learn any language, these are the four skills you need to master, you need to acquire. reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Now, whatever chronology we apply, listening is always comes at the end, at the last. So most of the time, it is speaking and writing which dominate over the language skills. These are the four language skills, but of the four language skills, um, perhaps speaking and writing is focused more. Then comes reading. We also have to know or learn how to speak, how to read the language. But listening comes at the end because we don't value listening much because of the assumption that we have been listening every day in and out. This is what we have been doing, so we don't need a special training for listening. So we always tend to take listening skill take for granted. Uh, because we think that this doesn't require much of an effort, but we are mistaken because listening is one of the most important skills and one of the most undervalued skills. We don't value listening much, and we tend to take it for granted. Listening, this is what we are doing in and day out. We sit at 10 o'clock in the morning and keep on listening till 4 in the evening. So what's the point? Why do we have to learn listening? This is not something very special that we have to uh, include that as part of our academic curriculum. So why do we have to learn listening? Because most of us don't listen. Yeah? We don't listen. Yes, Anisha? Okay. Yes. Uh, but we don't always have to listen to be defensive. No, that's defensive listening. Yeah, you're right. In arguments, we have to listen and then retaliate. Uh, that's true. But not in all cases do we have to listen for defensive or retaliatory reasons. But still, we must listen. The problem is we don't do that. And that is why we have included listening skills in a speaking class. Because listening is equally important as speaking. Yeah, you're right, because if we don't listen to our opponents, how are we going to defend? That's true. Uh, so, listening is not only important for defending our arguments, it is also very, very important for many other reasons. And we are going to learn what the reasons are. But if, yes, does anyone want to say something? Okay. So, if we thought that we don't need a training for listening because it is a naturally acquired gift, then probably we are wrong. Because most of us don't listen. We even don't know the strategies for good listening. As to what are we supposed to do while listening, we don't know. So it is important that we learn listening. And listening uh, benefits us in many ways, in multiple ways. One of them, especially for an argumentation class, critical thinking, and public speaking class, It is important, as Anisha said, because you need to listen to your opponents to be able to understand the depth and then retaliate and then respond and then defend. So that is one possible reasons. But there are many other reasons as to why we should learn the different strategies for effective listening. And what is listening after all? If we always claim that listening is something very easy, this is, listening skill is extremely undermined, and we tend to ignore the skill. This is something very easy, we don't have to. But this is one reason why there are so many emotional head-on collisions, because we don't listen. So when we start underestimating, undermining the skill, we are in for trouble and lot of troubles. But before that, you need to tell me what is the difference between between listening and hearing. Like Deep said, that when you hear uh, dogs barking outside and you hear that, so mm, you don't put in a lot of effort. It's there, and you listen and you hear. But listening brings in a lot of attention. Listening is much more. Uh, it's a conscious effort at something, right? Are there any other differences that you can tell me? Anything else that you can tell me about listening and hearing? Yeah, listening is something we choose to hear. Yes. Hmm. Okay. So developing your listening skills can have applications throughout your educational, personal, and professional lives. And you'll begin by examining the difference between hearing and listening. And uh, we will also try to find out your role as a listener, not only in a public speaking class, but also in the world. Okay, how keen you are as a listener and how it is going to benefit you, not only for a public speaking class, but elsewhere as well. So you will read about attributes of an active listener, barriers to listening, strategies to listen better, and finally, building on valuable lessons regarding listening. And this chapter will conclude with suggestions public speakers can use to encourage audiences to listen more attentively. So, what are we going to do in this lesson? We'll try and find out what's the difference, basic, primary difference between listening and hearing. What are the attributes of an active listener? What does an active listener do? What are the different barriers to listening? Why don't we listen to? There are a lot of distractions. So we need to identify these distractions. And what are the strategies to listen better? So, how can listening be used by public speakers? Now, public speakers can use this module on listening to encourage audience to listen more attentively. So, they can ensure that their audience members are listening more keenly. So speakers must also learn the strategies for good listening, because ultimately you're going to speak for the audience, for a general public. You're not going to speak it for your own sake. So it's public speaking. And in public speaking, the term public is very important. So you need to have a gathering to listen to you. For that, you'll have to ensure that they are listening to your speech. That's why, as public speakers, you need to learn listening so that you can encourage your audience to listen more attentively. That is why probably you need this module on listening. Now, as an individual, you can employ strategies to make you better listeners, to enhance your own listening skills. But as a public speaker in a public speaking classroom, you can use the different strategies for listening to ensure that your audience listen attentively to you. So, this chapter is again, um, we are using listening twofold, in twofold ways. You listening, you becoming a better listener, and you encouraging your audience to become better listeners, right? Now, what's the difference between hearing and listening? And yes, Deep, please read this out. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, audible.
Read it, Deep. Hmm. Oh, yes, yeah. Thank you, Deep. So, what was the last point? Take good care of your ears because you cannot listen when you cannot hear. So, what's the basic difference between hearing and listening? Now, hearing is receiving sound waves, and listening means hearing. And again, going a step further. So, when you simply hear the dogs barking outside, that is hearing. But when you try and interpret, when you try and understand what the dogs are, why they are barking, that means you go a step further and process what you have heard, and that's listening. But the most important difference is hearing uses only one sense organ, the ears. But listening uses our body's other senses and other organs. So hearing occurs or happens through ears, but uh, mm, listening uses our other organs like eyes. So we also try and understand through our eyes. We try to gaze and understand the non-verbal gestures of the speaker as well when someone is speaking. And we also use our brain. So our mental faculty comes into use when we are listening. So it is not only ears that we listen through, it is through our mind that we listen. So mind is something more important in listening. Everything that we understand, that we comprehend, that we try to perceive is through our minds. Our ears become just a transmitter. They transmit the sound signals. But what to make out of that sound signals is decided by our brain. So our eyes, ears, brain, everything work in tandem when we are listening. So please remember that we use one sense organ while hearing, but we use other organs while listening. So it is the brain which actually listens. Huh? Uh, so listening is observing others' behavior that can add meaning to the message, while hearing is simply receiving sound vibrations. And then we can gauge the nonverbal gestures. We can try and understand the tone, the other non-vocal components of the speaker, and many other things through which we can interpret the meaning. We can add meaning to the message, and all of them is are included in the process of listening. So listening can build better relationships with others, while hearing cannot. So this is another important aspect of listening, that listening can build better relationships. And we'll talk about how listening can enhance relationships, can mend relationships, which hearing cannot do. So these are the basic differences of hearing and listening. Moreover, hearing is a one-way process, whereas listening is a two-way process, because the listener uh, has to respond. Listening is a two-way process. You cannot be simply uh, passively hearing something and not respond. You may not overtly respond, but you definitely process things in your mind and come up with your response. It could be overt or it may not be. It could be simply a nodding that you have understood. So listening is a two-way process. Hearing is not. Hearing is a one-way process. Hearing is a passive approach, whereas listening is an active process. You have to be active. And hearing is involuntary, listening is not. Because you choose to listen, you have to volunteer to listen something. Whereas hearing, you don't have a choice. If there is a dog barking outside, you don't have a choice. The sounds waves will definitely come to your ears. But what you listen, you choose what you want to listen. So you have a choice over what you want to listen and what you don't want. So that's the difference here again. So hearing and listening. These are the difference. One is an active process, another is not. One is a two-way process, the other one is a one-way process. Uh, and listening is voluntary, you choose, whereas hearing is not. So that is also a basic difference between the two. Now there are four types of listening: appreciative, empathetic, comprehensive, and critical. Appreciative is listening for pleasure or enjoyment. When you when you listen for pleasure, like music, music is listening for pleasure or enjoyment. That's appreciative listening. Empathetic listening is when you listen to provide emotional support to a speaker. Uh, what these psychiatrists and counselors do? They charge you money for listening. Sometimes we just want to speak out. We want someone to listen to us because everyone is so engaged and so busy uh, with their own work, uh, with they are so engrossed with themselves. Uh, None of them have time for someone else. So at times we simply want to speak through and want a patient listener. And this is exactly what the counselors and psychiatrists do because they don't resolve your problems. Because sometimes when you speak out, when you speak your heart out, I mean, the very process is therapeutic for you. So listening is therapeutic. And when you speak out, you you realize that midway you are able to resolve your issues, your conflicts, your crisis. So it is you who resolves your own crisis, but then you want someone to listen to that. And this is exactly what the psychiatrists or the counselors do. So some of us who are very depressed, who needs treatment, who go to who visits the psychiatrist or counselors for their mental issues, what do? They basically give you a very patient hearing. They listen to you, and then you realize that probably we have resolved the issues when we are speaking our heart out. And in this way, listening can enhance your relationship, can build your relationship. And uh, most of the time, it is your own friend who can be your best counselor or best psychiatrist. Because your friends can listen through without making judgments, without judging you, without evaluating you, without telling you what's good or what's bad. Because sometimes we don't want to listen to anything, we just want to speak out. So most of the time, I think, I personally believe that your friends can become your best counselors. You don't have to go pay heavy money, a lot of money to counselors and psychiatrists for listening through what your friends can do. And in this way, they can listening builds up or enhances good relationship. So listening not only helps us in other ways, but also, very importantly, it helps us to connect with people. It helps us to build relationships. Very, very importantly. The other day I got a call uh, from one of my students. I was teaching him maybe a couple of years ago. He just called me up and he said, "I'd like to talk to you." I said, "Yes, please go ahead. How can I help you?" And then he told all the problems that he's going through, all the family issues, the problems. Then I said, "How can I help you?" He said, I don't want anything. I just wanted to speak this out to someone, and I thought, who better than you? And I'm feeling relaxed. I'm feeling relieved. See, I didn't do much because I can't. I can't do much. The scenario, the cases that he told me, I somehow can't do. But just listening to him, that helped. So sometimes when you listen empathetically, this is where empathy comes in. We were talking about empathy, and all of you, most of you told about empathy in the ethics class. So, see how empathy and listening are very, very closely connected, very closely linked. So, when you're being empathetic, you just listen through. You don't have to make judgments, don't have to judge the other person, don't have to satire him, nothing. Just listen. Give a very patient hearing, uh, sympathetic, being empathetic to the other person, This resolves a lot of issues. And I said, thank you so much for listening me out. I just wanted to say this and I couldn't find anyone to speak to. Right? So, listening, empathetic listening, counselors. They just do nothing. They take a lot of money. You just have to pay a lot of money to them and doesn't help much. So your friends are the best counselors. So when you listen to provide emotional support, it's empathetic listening, and this also enhances your relationship because when you listen to someone, it reflects, it suggests that you respect the other person. The speaker feels good. It enhances his self-esteem. The speaker feels that when he or she is being listened to, their self-esteem is enhanced. They feel confident. So from the next class onwards, when your friends speak, please listen. They will feel good. This will also build up their confidence. So listening helps us in more than one ways, many ways. There are multiple benefits of listening, not only for the listener, but also for the speaker. It is the speaker also who gets benefited out of you listening to him or her. And the third type of listening is comprehensive listening. When you listen to understand the message of the speaker, which you do in regularly in the classroom from 10 to 4, uh, that's comprehensive listening. In classroom, in seminars, in lectures, you tend to listen to understand the message of the speaker, and that's called comprehensive listening. And finally, this is critical listening, which we require in a public speaking class, because you listen to evaluate a message for purposes of accepting it or rejecting it. So campaign speech, political campaigns, when leaders deliver speeches. So you act as a critical listener. You evaluate the message so that you can accept it or reject it. Or um, when there's a sales pitch, when there's advertisement campaigns, and herein comes the critical listening aspect. You listen for the purpose of accepting it or rejecting it. These are the four types of listening: appreciative, empathetic, comprehensive, and critical. Now, in comprehensive and critical listening skills, there are other skills which are ingrained. And what are they? In comprehensive listening, you try to summarize the information because comprehensive listening is done to understand the message. So, while doing so, what you also simultaneously do is you summarize the information, you recall the facts, and you try and distinguish the major from the minor points. Now, one of the sub skills of listening is trying to distinguish the key idea of the speaker. And this is very important, which I think most listeners don't do. They are not able to distinguish the central idea, the main point. Uh, how many of you have, are there any Disney fans now? How many of you have watched the movie Moana?
I have watched it, ma'am.
Okay. No one else in the class? No Disney fan, all MCUs, all Marvel Cinematic fans, yeah.
Ma'am, which movie?
Moana. Moana, that's a Disney movie, I guess. No, no one. Okay.
Yeah, Marvel is also a Disney right now.
These are animations. Moana is an animation.
Yes, ma'am, watched it.
Okay, okay. Uh, so what is the central idea? Yeah, I know Nishikant, most of you would be Marvel fans. I know that. But sometimes watch Disney movies, they are very musical and uh, I don't but I like
Inspirational.
yeah.
Very strong girl. I mean, very.
What is Bhai Cinematic Universe? Oh, that senior citizen Bhai. Hmm, very good. I mean, you still have guys who are goodness. Yeah, Lion King. Yes, Disney movies are very musical and very creative, and thematically very strong. If you go and analyze the theme, they're very strong. And I really pity people. Seriously, I mean, you still watch Bhai, so hail you. I mean, okay. Yeah, yeah, okay. Great, Nishikant. So, okay, so, uh, okay, forget Moana because most of you have not seen. What's uh, I think all of you might have seen Drishyam. Yeah.
That Ajay
Yes, ma'am.
Devgan.
Hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
Hmm. What is the central idea of the movie?
Ma'am, creating an illusion.
Yes, Drishyam, no?
Yeah.
Drishyam, so the title itself suggests that whatever you see hmm, may not be all true, right? So visuals are more powerful and they leave a deep impact. So that's the central idea of the movie. So a good listener, basically, and Moana. If I don't know, most of you have not seen, but it's a very musical movie. I particularly liked it. So the central idea is that we need to, uh, give back nature whatever we have exploited from it. Yeah, Kanksha. So it's time that nature will reclaim everything that has been taken away. So it's time that we place nature in its, or we give nature its rightful place. That the green ruby that had to be placed is basically the greenery that nature has to reclaim. So nature reclaims everything, and it's time we pay back. We give nature its rightful place. So, listening, one of the most important aspects or sub-skill of listening is finding out, is distinguishing the key ideas. That's a very, very important skill in listening. So, if it's a comprehensive listening that you're doing, you need to take care of these three things. When it's a comprehensive listening, for example, you're listening to a class or lecture, So you need to summarize all the information that your instructor has told you in the class. It's number one. Recall the facts that has been told and distinguish the key ideas of the speaker. What's the key idea? What were the major points, or what were the central idea of what our teacher or instructor said in the class? And if it's a critical listening that you're doing, we must ensure what is fact and what is opinion. We must know the difference between a fact and an opinion. I think all of you know what's a fact and what's an opinion, isn't it? I think so. You know the difference.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, between facts and opinion. So in critical listening, we must know the difference between fact and opinion, and we should be able to separate fact from opinion. We must also find out whether there is any flaws in the reasoning that the speaker is giving, any fallacy of reasoning. We'll do that, don't worry. There are four types of fallacies. So, is there any fallacy in the reasoning, and whether the evidence is sound, whether the evidence provided by the speaker is acceptable or not acceptable. So, in critical listening, we also have to simultaneously have these skills. So, these are the skills ingrained in listening: summarizing the information, recalling the facts, distinguishing key ideas. That's very, very important, distinguishing key ideas in a speech. I had a professor in my university when I was doing my master's, and he was a very renowned professor, and a very funny man, a very humorous man. He used to teach us romantic poetry. I was a student of English literature, so there are different ages of English literature, Shakespearean, Renaissance, Romantic. So in Romantic poetry, we used to study Wordsworth and Shelley and Keats. I think you might have read some of them in the school. Daffodils and uh, what are the other poems? So Lucy. But these are the poems. So he used to teach us romantic poetry, and in his 1 hour class, he used to speak everything from Bollywood to the American media to a lot of things, and almost 45 minutes of the class, he used to speak many different things, but he spoke something very significant, and all his key ideas were there, and it's in the 15 minutes that he spoke all the key ideas. So in the entire 60-minute class, we have to be keenly listening to him, because if we did not, if we get distracted, then possibly we might lose out on the key idea. So in spite of everything that he spoke in the class, which was redundant, there were certain time or certain part where he spoke, where he gave the main idea. So it is important to not be distracted, at least in his class. The other professors had their own techniques of teaching. I mean, they used to come with PowerPoints, and there were pointers where we were able to find out or gaze what were the key points, key ideas. Because they would keep repeating the key ideas every now and then, like I do, or other teachers might be doing that. But his name was Professor Merchant. Uh, he was a very cute old man, Parsi man. But he spoke literally anything in his class. And if we get distracted, then we would never be able to find out the key idea. But in sometimes in between, of the 60-minute class, sometimes in between, he used to put in or bring in the key idea. So it's important as a keen listener, your competency as a listener is is reflected in the way you are able to distinguish the key ideas from the speaker. So one of the most important sub skills of listening is this. Like you said, no, this is the key idea of the movie Drishyam, yes, right. So in the entire 2.5 hour movie, you should be able to find out what is the central idea. Similarly, in a speech, in a lecture, you should be able to find out what the key point is. And therein lies your competency as a listener. What's the key idea? What is the major point? And what are the minor points? The rest of my teachers used to bring in their own techniques of teaching, their own techniques. Like they used to give us PowerPoints, or they used to give us all. They used to tell us repeatedly that these are the key ideas and this is the objective of the unit, and we are going to. But Professor Merchant never did that. He never used to come with notes. Never. He used to simply sit. Uh, and he never told us that this is what we are going to do in today's class. This is the poet we are going to discuss. He never did that. We only knew it through our syllabus. Romantic poetry, Professor Merchant. That is what was reflected in our framework of syllabus. So we knew that romantic poetry will be taught by Professor Merchant, and he spoke anything and everything. His activism, he was, guess he was a Parsi man from Iran, and um, he told us about his struggles and strives in Iran, how he was about to be persecuted in Iran because of his boldness, because of his activism, and then he came to India, and everything from Bollywood, from activism, and then there somewhere in between used to give us the ideas about romantic poets, and he was an excellent teacher, I must say. So I still remember him, his classes. So it's important that as listeners, as attentive listeners, as effective listeners, you should be able to distinguish the major points from the minor points of a speech. That's very important as a listener. So today's takeaway lesson is this. Besides knowing the difference between listening and hearing, one major idea is you use one sense organ for hearing, but many organs for listening, because you also listen through your eyes, you listen through your brain. So all of them are very important for listening. That's the difference between listening and hearing. Hearing is involuntary, you don't have a choice. Listening is voluntary, you choose. Okay. So the important takeaway from this class, I mean today's class, is that an attentive listener or a keen listener must be able to delineate the key ideas of the speaker. Okay? Any queries, any questions? Most of them have left the meeting. Why? It's not time, no? We still have 2 minutes. Why are they leaving the class like this? Why is an exodus of students now? Where are they running, all of them? It's tea time for them. Why I'm still not audible? I guess he has a problem with his audio. Anyways, but why is everyone running away like this? Okay. Any questions?
Chai time.
We don't have any effect here. No Yash effect here. Simply drizzled. Oh my god. When is the quiz? Not today. It's not. Oh, okay.
On Tuesday. Timetable देख.
Oh. तो आज तो फ्राइडे है ना, इतनी क्या हड़बड़ी है?
Topic है.
इसलिए मैं बोलती हूँ कि क्लास में सुना करो, बिकॉज क्लास में सुनोगे तो हाफ योर वर्क इज डन. इतना work नहीं करना पड़ेगा. अभी थोड़ी खत्म होगा. दिस इज मिडवे ना, अभी तो मिडवे हुआ है ना आधा.
Notes मिळून.
ओह अच्छा. There are more serious issues in life, है ना दीप? जैसे DSA, ISA, पता नहीं और क्या क्या पढ़ते हो तुम लोग. Anyway, but don't worry about CTC. It's a relief because मुझे लगता है कि CTC में you need common sense rather than anything else. You have to have your presence of mind and common sense. अगर common sense नहीं है तुम, but तुम्हारे सेक्शन के बच्चों का तो बहुत ज्यादा ही common sense है. Sense कुछ ज्यादा ही evolved है. A lot of evolutionary things that are going on in your class.
Thank you, ma'am.
तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, तुम लोगों को दिक्कत नहीं होगा. You are
Thank you.
evolved.
Our class is the most entertaining class.
Yes, yes, very much. And एक बार बोलना शुरू करते हो तो खत्म ही नहीं होता तुम लोगों की बात तो. बढ़िया. It's full entertainment. Entertainment.
मैम लेकिन अच्छा भी बोलते हैं हम लोग.
हाँ.
अच्छा भी बोलते हैं हम लोग.
Yeah. All of you are very aware of things. That's good thing.
Ma'am, is there any way to cancel the exams?
Invite another cyclone, Srinath.
Yes, Sonatan cyclone.
Another cyclone, and make the landfall. The epicenter of the cyclone should be here. The eye of the cyclone should be somewhere in Puri or Puri, and then exams will be cancelled. That's it.
Okay, ma'am, God.
But unfortunately, Yash could not affect us much this time. So, okay. So, good luck for you. I'll see you in the next class. Anisha has her funda. Marks don't define you. That's right. True, Anisha. I agree.
After exam, our father will define us.
Pocket money band.
Inside home band.
Okay, read for your father. पापा कहते हैं. Okay. You have your bank account. True. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.